Hello everyone, how's it going? In this video I'm going to talk about the player versus environment PvE objects and how you can make your map more fun to play by really boosting the PvE side of your map. So if you remember from a few videos ago in my neutral areas, I was talking about how I really want to reward people for coming all the way out here with all these extra stat boosts and the Dragon Utopia. And one way that I can really pique your curiosity is if I do a HUD of the Magi. Probably do it like right there, and then for blue, I'll do it over here. And then where do I want the eyeballs to be? Well, I definitely want this to be visible. I definitely want this to be visible, this to be visible, this to be visible. And then if I had other stuff on this map, I'd probably eyeball that stuff as well. But now you're sitting in your starting area and you see, wow, Dragon Utopia, Library, Random Town, Random Town. I definitely need to get over to this side of the map. So even though you see that there's roads taking you straight to the enemy player, now that I've shown you that there's more than just the left side of this map, maybe you're starting to get second thoughts about, well, should I just beeline straight to the other player? And while granted, most of that is largely based on what kind of town you're playing, I have at least given you a good reason to venture out this way. I feel like a well-placed den of thieves in a high conflict area would definitely give you an idea for how much time and energy you can dedicate to player versus environment. And then now that we're kind of done entertaining the left side, let's load up the right side with player versus environment. So you definitely want quest huts, and I'm going to talk about quests themselves and how I like to structure them in another video in my miscellaneous tutorials. But just because we're talking about player versus environment, if I'm going to put the start point of a quest this far away from the starting area, I would much rather have it ask you to bring something you're likely to already have. So this would probably be a return with creatures, and how about, now you know what, let's do, oh, you're looking at nothing right now. I'm going to do a return with resources, and I want you to bring 10,000 gold, and I'll reward you with, how about a couple of archangels or something like that. Not the most exciting quest, but I have given you a reason to at least drop off some of your gold. I've rewarded you for your exploration, and I've encouraged you to come all this way out here. Now, I don't do all of my quest huts like that. Typically, if there's a really strong artifact that I want to have in the map, I'll put it behind a seer's hut, and I'll make sure that it's something that you could not have done yet, so you have to return with a specific artifact from the high conflict area or something to that extent, where I'm making you go to a part of the map that the other player has almost certainly been to and picked up, and I'm making sure that you have to fight for whatever I'm protecting inside the quest hut. But I feel that the quest hut itself is only one way of doing this. I could also brush you, and now I have this entire area in here where I could quest guard him off. And now I've got another quest where instead of directly giving it to you, I can show you exactly what you gain from accessing this area. Same thing with border guards. The border guards, I feel, I'm not the best at using them. I do enjoy seeing maps that use them well, because it encourages you to stop by and pick it up, because you never quite know when you're going to need it. So I could put the red Keymaster tent there, and then maybe instead of a level 7, I've got just a red guard right there, and now I need to reclose this off, otherwise it's largely symbolic for whether or not you can actually pass. So you've got some questing that enables and unlocks different parts of the maps. You've got questing that has you come back with certain resources or creatures or anything to that extent. And then finally you've got the garrisons, which in a high conflict map like this, I feel it's almost necessary to have garrisons, just so that you don't have to get caught, and you can actually protect yourself. So I'll make this one belong to player 1. And I'll make this one belong to player 2. And not only does this enable both players to get out there and get at each other faster instead of having to fight to leave, but if they want to protect themselves, they can. Now, something to keep in mind is if you allow Dimension Door, I can just hop right over this and your garrison is useless. So if you're playing a map that allows players to use Dimension Door or fly, I would not bother putting garrisons anywhere on my map, because otherwise they're not protecting anything. They're not doing their job. So as far as quests are concerned, I feel that the Keymaster tents and the garrisons do a very strong job of kind of forcing you to explore the entire map to make sure that you get access to the walled off sections. Some other strong player versus environment objects would probably be just a lot of the like the Warrior's Tomb or the Scholar, or a lot of the buildings that I already placed on here, like the Dragon Utopia, the University, stuff that really gives you an advantage if you stumble across it in the wild. It's my preference to kind of keep these tucked away. However, if you place a very, very, very public Dragon Utopia, and I'll even eyeball that one so both players know that I'm serious about this, it can be a very game-changing object, and it can really encourage players to rush straight at each other. So even though I'm talking about player versus environment and Dragon Utopia as being probably one of the better ones because of how strong the guards are, you can also use it in player versus player to really encourage players to rush straight at each other. What else? Typically, we talked about this with the starting areas, but I want to encourage players to fight for their rewards when they're out in these player versus environment areas. Otherwise, you can just buy a hero and just send them around and collect everything. And I do like to have a lot of collectibles, just so that you can keep your economy going and keep your game going. But for the most part, I feel like you should have to fight once you're far enough away from your castle. And that is my preference, but the time it takes to get from the bottom corner all the way up here, everyone on the map should have some kind of army anyway. So it's not like I'm really restricting you. Events are also possible. You can load it up with Guardians and experience. However, instead of events, I am a much bigger fan of Pandora's Box, because now you know that there is probably going to be Guardians, and then where is the Pandora's Box? I think it's here it is. At least now, instead of a random event where you're stuck fighting, you can at least choose whether or not to fight the Guardians and get the rewards. So it's kind of a choice. I use events to tell a story. I will never put guardians in an event, because I'd rather have it tell a story and then maybe affect your resources plus or minus, or affect your creatures plus or minus. But if I want you to maybe fight something, maybe not, that's where the Pandora's box comes into play. The buildable artifacts, you'll see this when I start making my maps, but typically what I will do is I'll figure out what is needed. So the elixir of life, I know that I need ring of vitality, ring of life, and a vial of blood. So there's typically one corner of the map that I don't fill in until the very end, and now I know I can just drag and drop these artifacts where I want them. So now I know for sure that you can build the elixir of life on this map. I wish that more maps used buildables, but they are very, very powerful artifacts, so I understand why they aren't used that much. It's just a shame that when you just load everything up with random artifacts, you're almost never going to get a buildable. You might get the elixir of life, because I'm pretty sure it's the easiest buildable. It's the only one that requires 3. Oh, bow of the sharpshooter requires 3. So that covers artifacts. And the Grail, keep in mind that in your right click menu, I know it's not going to show up, but you have a radius to choose from. Typically what I will do when I build my maps is I will put it about as close to center as I can. So there's a 50, so I know I have about 50 units in every direction. And so when I do a right click on a radius, I can give it a radius of something like 40, just to make sure that it's not tucked away in anyone's starting base. So if it's 40, how about I just undo this? So I was at 50-50, so I need to go down to 90-90. So this rectangle right here is where the Grail could end up with a radius of 40. So you can see that it's not really tucked too deep into anyone's starting area. In fact, red, it's almost certainly not in his starting area. Blue has a much better chance of it. So maybe I would slide this down 1 or 2 units. But now you have a Grail that almost certainly is going to be in high contest. It covers enough of the low conflict areas that it, as a percentage of surface area, or as a percentage of area, would probably show up in a low conflict area, but you almost certainly will have to fight the other player to get the Grail. So plenty of radius, and if you weren't interested in that, you could probably like slide it over something like this, and then give yourself a radius of 7 or something like that. So I'm at 92-42, so 99, 49, something like that for your placement radius. So it's going to show up somewhere in here. I personally prefer big placement radii over small placement radii, because I feel like once you know where the Grail is, the map itself is kind of ruined. Not like in-game once you know where it is, but as far as replayability, I like to have my maps be replayable so it's different most times you play it, just based on where you start, who you start with, and where everyone else is. So having a Grail with such a small radius like this, it almost ensures that blue is closer to it, and with the AI and harder difficulties, you'd almost certainly get the Grail before you even knew where to look. So kind of a disappointment. If this was the setup, I'd much rather see it centralized on the map with a large placement radius, but that's just me. Number of obelisks in order to find the Grail, that is something I'm still playing around with, to be honest. I still haven't decided whether I like maps with lots of obelisks that require you to go everywhere on the map to find the Grail, or if it's just a couple of small ones in the neutral areas. Like if I were to just load up the high conflict area with 4 obelisks, and I removed the others. So now you only have to find 4 obelisks to find a Grail. Someone's going to find this Grail, and the Grail is definitely going to come into play on this map. So you have to make a choice whether or not you want the Grail to be found. Because if I'm going to just put like 20 obelisks in every single area on the map, it's much more likely that I'm just going to kill blue before I find the Grail, because I've already searched the entire map. I probably have a large portion of it flagged. The Grail doesn't really add anything to me at that point. I already have total map control. So at this point, I lean more towards easy to find Grails so that they can come into play during a map. However, I do understand people that make it very hard to find the Grail, or put it in a specific location and then use events to find it. I mean, there's so much more to talk about for player versus environment, but the idea here is a good way to know if you have player versus environment, a good presence of it on your map is, can you have one hero dedicated to attacking the other player and yet have 1 to 5 other heroes running around the map, constantly interacting with it and constantly being challenged and rewarded for your exploration and for the fights that take place away from the other player. If you can constantly progress the player with your player versus environment settings, and if you can challenge them instead of just giving them rewards, then you definitely have a strong PvE environment. And I'm definitely planning on making a map that is just a 1-player PvE, just so I can really talk about some of this stuff in detail. So for now, that's good enough for a video. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, or subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.